Delivering this week's must-watch workplace storylines, this is Bloomberg Law's Punching In, for those of you listening in Washington and across the globe.
Welcome, and thanks for punching in with us today. I'm your host, Hassan Kanu, here to give you a rundown of what to keep an eye on this week in the labor and employment space. We'll go first to the Department of Labor, where my colleague Jaclyn Diaz has been keeping pretty busy. Hi, Jaclyn.
Hey.
So I know you've been reporting recently. I know the DOL released some compliance guidance letters for employers the past few days at least. I know they're also holding listening sessions as we speak, getting input on on a coming overtime rule. But the reporting that I paid attention to the most was your reporting on, I know you had a chance to catch up with the former director of the office at DOL that sort of regulates businesses that have federal government contracts, right? Tell us a bit about that.
Sure. I caught up with Ondray Harris, the former director of the OFCCP. He got a new job at Hunton Andrews Kurth, a law firm with an office in D.C., and we talked a little bit about his goals when he took over the OFCCP close to 9 months ago. And mainly those goals were focused on making life a little easier for employers when it came to compliance issues. There had been some speculation as to why he left after what seemed to be such a short stint, but Harris said a lot of those claims are overblown. He's just not the kind of person who wants to remain in government his whole life, and he only really took the position for the OFCCP because Acosta asked him to come aboard.
Mm-hmm. Harris was always sort of an interesting part of this administration to me in terms of his views. Now, did you guys talk a bit about his time spent in the office working with those folks for 9 months? Did he give you a bit of intel on that?
He did. He said that he felt like he started to turn the OFCCP in the right direction, focused on more making those compliance goals for employers easier. But he did have some issues with some employees that worked there. Namely, he felt that some of them came from the viewpoint that all employers are bad, which to him was just not the case, and it didn't help further compliance.
Right, that's interesting. We've definitely seen a similar dynamic between President Trump's appointees at other agencies, sort of a tension between the president's picks and the career staffers within the agency, definitely EPA and at the NLRB, of course, too. Now, in terms of a retrospective, what did Mr. Harris, did you guys talk about sort of his biggest accomplishments, things he felt like he achieved before he left?
Sure. He definitely felt that he achieved what he wanted to in regards to making compliance easier for employers and improving that relationship between employers and the OFCCP. Just generally, Ondray's goals mirrored that of the DOL, which recently created the Office of Compliance Initiatives, which sole purpose is to help employers understand their requirements under labor law and to make compliance easier.
It's interesting. We'll definitely be keeping up with that office and how it carries out its new mission. Thanks for joining us, Jaclyn.
Thank you.
Our next item takes us to Congress now, where members will be back tomorrow after a brief August recess and the Labor Day holiday today, of course. On the labor and employment end there, Democrat Mark Pierce, we've been covering the story for the past couple episodes. Turns out Democrat Mark Pierce was actually renominated by President Trump back to the labor board. That happened Tuesday, quite late on Tuesday last week. That came about after about 2 weeks or so of some pretty loud opposition from business groups and management attorneys. There were op-eds in the Wall Street Journal and a number of other major publications, statements directed at the White House, sort of opposing Pierce generally, saying from a business perspective that he's not the best nominee here. It's bad for business, essentially. Turns out that the White House did decide to reappoint Mark Pierce anyway. We suspect that it's more than likely part of a deal. We, of course, reported about a week or so ago that there were negotiations between senators on both sides of the aisle, negotiations involving Mark Pierce, and also that one of those nominees in those discussions happens to be Mitch McConnell's brother-in-law, Gordon Hartogensis, who's been appointed to head the agency that oversees pensions. Earlier in the day, another note here is that the same day as Pierce's nominations, there was a deal reached to confirm 7 of President Trump's judicial picks for federal judgeships, and actually 8 more will be confirmed next week. Now, to be clear, it's we don't know, and everyone's being pretty hush-hush about the specifics of the deal. In other words, I can't say that the agreement to renominate Pierce was in exchange for the judgeships, for example. But obviously, there was some agreement here to reach this nominee in the face of such strong opposition, and that was from folks who typically have the White House and Congress's ear on these labor issues, right? The Chamber of Commerce, the International Franchise Association, groups like that. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as Pierce goes through Congress. This will be actually his 3rd go-around. He's been on the labor board since 2010. woman, was nominated twice by President Barack Obama. And of course, we'll also be keeping an eye to see if anything does happen with Mr. Hartogensis, Mitch McConnell's in-law. Now, as far as Pierce's nomination, the Chamber of Commerce has publicly already come out against it, urging senators to vote against it. I'll just say on a personal level, my prediction as of last week was half right, if you remember. I'll say here again that it seems unlikely he won't be confirmed, just sort of given the fact of him being renominated again in the first place. In any case, I will be at those hearings, live tweeting and reporting on those, and we will, of course, discuss it in any episodes that come out. That's it for today. Thanks for punching in, and be sure to join us next week. Have a good one.